Well, today we're going to talk to a lot of the racers about their early memories of the sport of NHRA drag racing. And we'll start that with Jerry Tolliver. And Tolliver has a long legacy in this sport.
As most people know, my uncles are Art Christman and Jack Christman, who are both NHRA Hall of Famers. So they were racing in the early 50s, and I was just a little boy. I remember going at the racetrack, but I remember even the biggest remembrance I have is going to my grandfather's and my grandmother's house after they went to a race, and they'd pull in the front of the house with these trailers. They're open, open trailers in behind the pickup trucks, and they bring in these trophies, and these trophies were probably 10 feet tall then. They were humongous, and as a little boy, you used to look at them and go, wow, that's the coolest thing in the world. But I used to go to the racetrack all the time with my family and watch my uncles, so it was a great time growing up.
Coming up, we're going to...
Well, my earliest racing memory as a fan at the racetrack was going to Gainesville, Florida for the Gator Nationals with Jamie in the stands with us. And we'd go up in the stands and watch the sessions, just session after session after session. And Jamie would lay on the stands and sleep. I mean, he'd sleep right through Top Fuel, Funny Car, Pro Stock, everything, just like that. And then we would go down to the pits, and I would go down and I'd stand outside Bob Glidden's pits, and I'd just stand there and stare for like an hour. And finally one day, Etta Glidden came back to the back of the pits, and she looked at me and she says, "Is there something I can help you with, sir?" Because, I mean, I guess I look like a stalker because I was just standing there staring. I laughed. My wife, Tony, said, "Jim, I'm not going with you to the track anymore if you're going to do that," because it was embarrassing. I was so fascinated with Pro Stock and just so overwhelmed with it, I just couldn't get enough. I just stood there and just watched it.
There's Larry Morgan. And we're talking about memories, and Larry's goes back to his early days in Columbus, Ohio.
We had a points meet back at National Trails, and I used to go there, and I always wanted to race because it just looked like something that would be fun. And I always remember going to the points meet. It was like a big event for us. And I'd watch the Pro Stock guys, and I always thought I could do that someday. And I remember watching Bob Glidden work on his car, and always thinking that would be awful cool to do. When I was in high school, my senior spotlight, they asked me what I wanted to do with my life, and I told them that I wanted to become a professional drag racer. And hey, I'm lucky enough to be able to do that. Not many people can say that. It's been a dream come true for me.
One of my earliest racing memories, I didn't start following drag racing until about mid-90s, but I remember my first national event I ever went to was at Maple Grove about 93 or 94, and man, I was just blown away. I'd been to a lot of NASCAR races, never been to a drag race, and get up there and watch the fuel cars run and stuff, it's just mind-blowing. But, Pro Stock's kind of always been my following, and watching Warren and those guys out there racing, and just really got the itch going for me. So finally started going home and taking my Mustang out to the local track and beating on it, and got it to run 10s, and it got me hooked. Just the adrenaline rush every time you pull up to the line, you get to let the clutch out, and it's the best thing in the world.
Probably the biggest memory I have is my dad was dirt track racing. That was before I'd even allow kids or women in the pits. Probably around the late 60s, and I was just probably a 7 or 8 year old kid. And my dad's left front tire come off going into a turn. He raced late model dirt, and he flipped about 6 or 7 times. And my mom tore out down the bleachers and jumped over the fence and across the track with cars still running. She went over and found my dad. He was out of the car, broke his thumb, bloodied him up a little bit. But he's like, "I'm going to go over and check out my car and see how bad it tore it up." She just stood around there, I guess. He come back and he couldn't find her anywhere, and she was in the ambulance. She had passed out. That was a funny time.
I don't know how you were raised, but if I'd made that joke on Mom, I think she would have slapped me silly.
Yeah, my mom fell off the diving board and hit her head on the side of the thing, and we all kind of laughed a little bit. Nah.
We're talking about memories. His early memories of drag racing comes from drag racing. He actually raced.
We got started racing junior dragsters when I was 10, and just by going out and doing that, I had a love for drag racing. Then by coming to the national events, well, I think it was 93 at the U.S. Nationals. They used to run the junior dragsters right before the fuel guys went out, in between the sessions. And, you're parked in the staging lanes next to John Force and Kenny Bernstein, and you're going up, running up to the crew guys, asking if you can get a picture with those guys. And, they're as cool as hell to us little kids, going up, taking a chance and showing us their cars and giving us autographs and pictures. And now I can, do the same thing to little kids out the ropes out here.
And I guarantee you he's got some heroes with some of them little kids, because J.R. Todd is a great role model and a great top fuel driver in his own right.
So now we'll look to Corey Mack's memory from the early days of Orange County.
Probably first and foremost memories would be just being a kid playing underneath the stands. As I got a little bit older, I started seeing this, the days of going to Orange County, 64 funny cars, and, Don the Snake Perdome, Tom the Mongoose McEwen, Kenny Bernstein, Eddie Ace McCullough. So a lot of my memories revolved around funny cars, and it's funny that I never end up in a funny car, because those are probably my first and foremost memories of them. Watching jet cars, that was always cool. Watching a jet car go over 300 miles an hour, and during their little afterburner thing before they'd stage, they were knocking the boards down behind the tower. So, just that kind of thing would probably be my first and foremost memories.
Tron grew up close to the old Bridge Township Raceway Park in Englishtown, New Jersey. He shares some of his memories from being at the track as a youngster.
When I was probably about 5 to 6 years old, I was out here calling myself. I was helping my dad and my uncle on their race cars, and I thought I was polishing the rims, but you don't polish the rims with a screwdriver. I took a flathead screwdriver, and I thought I was polishing the rims, and I was scratching them and tearing them up, and to see my dad's expression on his face, and my mom took a picture of it, and it's so funny to see the expression on his face where he was going crazy. He couldn't do nothing to me. I couldn't get a spanker whip because, I thought I was helping him, and I was tearing them rims up. I'll never forget. I was tearing them American race rims up with a screwdriver, and my dad came up there, just had a smile, and he goes, well, he told me he was going to polish the rims, but I didn't think he was going to polish them like that. So next time he made sure I had a rag. So that was the most memorable time I had a drag strip when I can remember, when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Jack Beckman has a memory. It goes back to 1973 in Orange County.
I remember everything about my first trip, my first 10 trips to the drag race. I was 7 years old. My brother was 8. My Uncle John took us to Orange County International Raceway. It would have been 73. The way it smelled, the nachos. I remember what they smelled like. I remember what they tasted like. Goosebumps on my arms when they did burnouts. The top fuel dragsters on the last beat of the national anthem, they were doing push starts, and they'd fire up right then. I thought, oh, this is unbelievable. They do their burnouts. They had to be pushed back at that time. The funny cars had these metal flakes, sparkle paint jobs, and when it became nightfall and watching them under artificial lights, I'm getting goosebumps right now just flashing back. It just, everything about it was perfect. And I try to remember that when the kids come here, because I want them to have the experience that I had. And, well, maybe I don't want to hook them for life. That'd cost them millions.
I had a lot of heroes in drag racing. Don Perdome probably was the most. Growing up, I built his models, and as a kid, I built a lot of models, but I always took my time with him, and his models were always the best. And I remember at breakfast one time, I was 7 years old, and I took a rule book, which my mom later, when I drove for Don Perdome, gave to me and reminded me about it. But I went up to him to get his autograph, and he was eating. I remember I was just above the table, and he was eating pancakes, and I remember him just having syrup on his fork, and I kind of went up and asked for his autograph, and he kind of growled at me and told me he was eating breakfast and to come back later. And that devastated me. I thought it was race day. It was that morning. I thought, oh man, I made Don Perdome mad, but he signed it. He came over and signed it afterwards. But it was funny when Don hired me, and my mom brought that out and just reminded me, and that was cool.